There's something happening inside your body right now that most doctors never talk about in a routine checkup. It has no dramatic symptoms, no sudden pain, no clear warning sign. It builds slowly, quietly, over years, and by the time most people notice it, they've already lost a significant portion of something they can never fully get back. I'm Dr. Samuel Prescott, and in the next few minutes, I want to show you a biological process that is almost certainly already underway in your body, one that the majority of adults over 40 are completely unaware of. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share changes the way most people understand their own strength, their own energy, and their own independence. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed that getting up from a chair takes slightly more effort than it used to? That climbing a flight of stairs leaves you a little more winded than you remember? That your legs feel heavier at the end of the day? Or that carrying groceries feels harder than it did 5 years ago? Most people chalk this up to aging. They tell themselves it's normal. They adjust. They slow down. They accept it. But here's what I need you to understand. What you're feeling is not just a passage of time. It is a signal. A biological signal, and ignoring it has consequences that go far beyond feeling tired. The human body reaches its peak muscle mass somewhere in the mid-30s. After that, without specific intervention, it begins to lose muscle tissue at a rate most people never see coming. In your 40s, the loss is subtle, gradual enough to dismiss. But by your 50s and 60s, the process accelerates. Studies have documented losses of 3 to 5% of muscle mass per decade after 40. And in some individuals, the rate is significantly higher. That means by the time someone reaches their 70s, they may have lost 20 to 30% of the muscle they had in their prime. 20 to 30%. Gone. And with it goes strength, stability, metabolic efficiency, and the physical independence that most of us take completely for granted. This condition has a name. It's called sarcopenia, and it is one of the most underdiagnosed, underestimated, and misunderstood processes in modern medicine. Not because the science is unclear. The science is actually very well established, but because there is no single dramatic moment where it announces itself. It doesn't arrive like a fracture or a fever. It arrives the way water carves stone. Slowly, persistently, without mercy. Now here's where it gets interesting, and where most conventional explanations fall short. Because sarcopenia is not simply about getting older. It is not just the inevitable result of living long enough. There is a specific biological mechanism at the core of this process, and understanding it changes everything about how you think about your body going forward. It starts with something called anabolic resistance. In a young, healthy body, when you eat protein or engage in physical activity, your muscles respond. They receive the signal, they synthesize new protein, they repair and grow. The system works as designed. But as the body ages, this responsiveness begins to deteriorate. The muscle tissue becomes, in a very real sense, resistant to the very signals that are supposed to maintain it. You can eat the same amount of protein you always have, move the same way you always have, and your muscles simply don't respond the way they used to. The communication between your nutrition, your activity, and your muscle tissue starts to break down. And most people have absolutely no idea this is happening. This is why so many adults over 50 find themselves doing everything they believe is right, eating reasonably, staying somewhat active, and still watching their strength decline. It's not willpower. It's not laziness. It's biology. Specifically, it is a biological system that is no longer receiving and processing the inputs it needs to maintain what took a lifetime to build. But there's another layer to this that most people never hear about, and this is the part one want you to pay close attention to. Alongside anabolic resistance, there's a process of low-grade chronic inflammation that silently accelerates muscle breakdown. This is not the acute inflammation you feel when you sprain an ankle. That kind of inflammation is part of healing. This is something different. This is a persistent systemic, low-level inflammatory state that researchers have increasingly linked to accelerated muscle loss, reduced regeneration, and impaired physical function. It operates beneath the threshold of obvious symptoms. Most people carrying this level of internal inflammation feel nothing unusual, just a vague sense of fatigue, a subtle loss of strength, a body that seems to recover more slowly than it once did. And here is what makes this particularly important. This inflammatory environment doesn't just slow down muscle building. It actively accelerates muscle breakdown. The body, in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, begins to break down muscle tissue faster than it can rebuild it. The balance tips, and once it tips far enough, the process begins to feed itself. Weaker muscles lead to less activity. Less activity leads to faster muscle loss. Faster muscle loss leads to more systemic vulnerability. And the cycle continues, quietly and visibly, until it is not so quiet anymore. Now I want to stop here for a moment, because if you've been watching this and nodding, if any of what I've described resonates with something you've been feeling in your own body, I need you to take that seriously. The difficulty getting up from a low surface, the legs that feel unreliable on stairs, the arms that seem to have lost their grip. These are not small inconveniences. They are the visible surface of a process that has been building for years beneath the skin. And this is the point where most people make one of two choices. They either dismiss it, tell themselves it's fine, it's normal, everyone goes through this, or they decide to understand what is actually happening and do something about it while the body still has the capacity to respond. Because that last part is critical. While the body still has the capacity to respond. There is a window here. The biology of muscle maintenance is not a one-way door, but it does narrow with time. The longer the internal environment stays imbalanced, the harder it becomes to support the system from the outside. This is not about fear. This is about understanding that the body is not passive. It is always doing something. And right now, without the right inputs, what it may be doing is losing ground that becomes progressively harder to recover. There is a natural approach that a growing number of people have begun incorporating specifically to support muscle function as the body ages. It doesn't replace movement or proper nutrition. Nothing does, but it works with the body's own mechanisms, providing specific amino acids in precise combinations that the aging muscle system increasingly struggles to utilize on its own. The logic is straightforward. If anabolic resistance means the body is becoming less efficient at using the building blocks of muscle tissue, then providing those building blocks in a form the body can more readily absorb, and use becomes increasingly important over time. 8 essential amino acids in a specific combination, giving the body what it needs to support its own protein synthesis, so that the gap between what the body needs and what it's actually getting begins to close. People who have incorporated this kind of support into their routine describe noticing things gradually, feeling more stable on their feet, finding that daily tasks require slightly less effort, a sense that the body is holding up better than it was before, not dramatic, not overnight, but real in the way that real biological support tends to be real, quietly, consistently, building over time. And I want to make something clear. This is not about looking a certain way. This is not about aesthetics. This is about function. About whether you can carry your own groceries at 75. About whether you can get up off the floor if you need to. About whether your legs will carry you reliably through the years ahead. These are not small things. These are the things that determine the quality of every single day. The ability to move through the world on your own terms, without assistance, without fear of falling, without wondering whether your body will cooperate. That is what muscle health actually means when it matters most. If any part of what I've described today sounds familiar, if you recognize in your own body even a fraction of what we talked about, then I want to encourage you to look at the link in the description and in the first comment below this video. What you'll find there is more information about this natural method of supporting muscle function, the specific combination of amino acids I've been referencing, and how people are using it to give their bodies the structural support that becomes more critical with every passing year. The research on sarcopenia is not ambiguous. The loss is real. The mechanism is real. And the window in which the body still responds to proper support is not unlimited. I've spent years looking at what happens to people who pay attention to this early versus those who wait until the weakness becomes undeniable. And the difference is significant, not because the problem becomes impossible to address, but because the body's ability to respond diminishes as the process advances. The people who act while they still feel relatively functional are the ones who tend to maintain that functionality. The ones who wait for a crisis tend to be managing a much steeper climb. You watch this video for a reason. Something in the title, something in the first few seconds, connected with something you've been feeling or wondering about. That connection is worth listening to. The body communicates before it breaks down. It sends signals in the form of fatigue, weakness, instability, reduce recovery, and those signals deserve a response. The link below this video takes you to more information about the natural muscle support method I've described today. The combination of 8 essential amino acids that gives the body the building blocks it needs to support its own protein production so you can feel stronger, more stable, and more capable in the years ahead. Not a promise of perfection, not a claim of cure. A scientifically grounded approach to giving your body what it needs to do what it was designed to do, maintain itself, support itself, and carry you forward. Don't wait until the signals become impossible to ignore. Check the link in the description and in the first comment. Your body is asking for something. This may be exactly what it needs.